We are closed. Go home to your spouses. Except you. You can stay. I have one last bottle. And you look like you need it. What is that on your face? Is that hope? Ugh, let me wipe that off for you. Drink this. It's called a Druid's tear. It tastes like elderberries, moral superiority, and the bitter realization that your ex was right about the compost heap. Don't ask what's floating in it. It's organic. You'll live. Probably. Now sit. Stop vibrating. You're distracting the shadows. And they get bitey when they're agitated. You wanted a story? You wanted to gaze into the abyss? Fine. But don't blame me when the abyss gazes back and serves you a restraining order. Today's scroll comes from the Public Forum of Screams, specifically the subsector of Am I the Asshole? Which, let's be honest, is just a fancy way of asking, did I roll a natural 1 on my charisma check? This isn't just a breakup story, my little tragic muffin. This is a saga of custody, interspecies politics, and the kind of petty legal warfare that makes Asmodeus look like a small claims court judge. We have a ranger, we have a druid, and we have a bear. But not just any bear. Oh no, buckle up, Buttercup. It's time for the case of the litigious ursine. Part 1, the context, or why rangers should never marry druids. Let's set the stage. Our protagonist, let's call him Kalen, is a 34-year-old half-elf beastmaster ranger. You know the type. Too many belts, smells like wet dog and pine needles, probably has a brooding monologue about his tragic backstory tattooed on his soul. He's the kind of guy who thinks taking a walk is a personality trait. His ex-wife, Alora, is a 300-year-old elf, Circle of the Moon druid, and let me tell you, there is nothing more terrifying than an elf who has lived through 3 centuries of fashion trends and decided that moss is the peak of couture. She's the type who judges you for using a potion of healing instead of aligning your chakras while you're bleeding out from a goblin spear. They live or lived in a sweet treehouse loft in the Feywild borderlands. Of course they did, because nothing says stable relationship like living in a realm where time is subjective and the squirrels try to steal your true name. The conflict? They are splitting up. The hoard is being divided. 5,000 gold pieces, some enchanted cookware that screams when you burn the toast. But the real war is over the dog. Except it's not a dog, it's Sir Fluffington. Sir Fluffington is a dire bear, a massive, apex predator, capable of ripping a knight in half like a wet paper towel. But Kalen, in his infinite wisdom, or perhaps infinite loneliness, decided to cast Awaken on the bear. For those of you who skipped Enchantment 101, Awaken gives a beast human-level intelligence and the ability to speak. So now Sir Fluffington isn't just a pet. He has an intelligence score of 10. He speaks common, and according to Kalen, he speaks it with a slight aristocratic accent. Because of course, the ranger used a linguistic primer written by a high society bard. So instead of roaring, this 2,000-pound killing machine says things like, "I say, father, the salmon is rather dry this evening. And do we have any gray poupon for the goblin thigh?" Kalen loves this bear. The bear is his best friend. They go on adventures. They share traumatic flashbacks. They probably have matching friendship bracelets. But here is where the tea spills. Ilara, the moon druid, wants co-parenting rights. Her argument? She can wild shape into a bear. She claims this gives her a biological and spiritual understanding of Sir Fluffington's needs that Kalen, a mere humanoid, can never possess. She says, and I quote from the scroll, "I know what it feels like to crave the hibernation. I know the song of the river. You just know how to throw a stick." Ouch! Kalen naturally thinks this is hogwash. He argues that just because she turns into a bear for battle doesn't mean she is a bear. He says, I don't claim to be a sword just because I hold one. Logic, a rare commodity in the Feywild. So Kalen refuses. He locks the treehouse. He puts up wards of non-entry. He tells Alara to go hug a treant. And Alara? She does what any rational 300-year-old druid would do. She sues him in the High Court of Family and Familiar Law. But do not get comfortable, my little chaos goblin. The real knife in the back doesn't happen till the third update. You think this is just about a bear? Oh, sweet summer child, you have no idea what happens when you give a predator an IQ score. Part 2, the confrontation, mediation, and mana burn. We move now to the mediation chamber. It's a neutral zone, probably a pocket dimension sanctioned by the god of bureaucracy. The walls are gray. The air smells like stale coffee and despair. Sitting at the table is Kalen, looking like he hasn't slept in a week, clutching a bag of Goodberry treats. Opposite him is Alara, looking radiant and smug, wearing a robe made of living vines that are actively photosynthesizing under the office lights. The mediator is a sphinx with a pair of reading glasses perched on its nose. Alara opens the arguments. She doesn't just speak, she projects. She talks about the sacred bond of the wild. She claims that Kalen is suppressing Sir Fluffington's natural instincts by forcing him to wear a monocle and a top hat for Tea Time Tuesdays. Your Honor, Alara says, her voice like wind through the leaves. This man treats a noble beast like a dress-up doll. Last week, I saw them. He made the bear wear a tuxedo. A tuxedo! Sir Fluffington is a creature of the forest, not a waiter at a vampire wedding. Kalen slams his hand on the table. He likes the tuxedo. He says it makes him feel dapper. And for your information, he chose the cummerbund color himself. The Sphinx sighs, a sound that rattles the bones of everyone in the room. Mr. Kalen, is the bear present? He is waiting in the carriage, Kalen says. He's reading the Morning Gazette. Alara scoffs. He's pretending to read. You've anthropomorphized him into a neuroses-riddled mess. When I am a bear, I feel his shame. I feel his desire to run naked through the streams, to claw the bark, to what? Kalen snaps. To eat garbage? Because that's what you do when you wild shape, Alara. Last time you were a raccoon, you ate my alchemy supplies and hallucinated for 3 days. Don't talk to me about dignity. Can we just pause for a moment to appreciate the sheer audacity of moon druids? They spend half their lives as badgers, and the other half telling you why you're disconnected from nature. Darling, I've seen nature. Nature is parasites, dysentery, and things eating your face. Civilization was invented for a reason. Indoor plumbing is magic. Anyway, back to the screaming match. Alara plays her trump card. She produces a scroll. It's a petition of kinship. She has gathered signatures from the vocal forest spirits, dryads, satyrs, a very confused owlbear, all attesting that Alara is the mother bear figure in Fluffington's life. She demands 50-50 custody, weekends and holidays, specifically hibernation season, which is basically half the year. Kalen is sweating. He knows he's losing. The Sphinx looks bored. Alara is glowing with the light of the goddess. It looks like the ranger is about to lose his best friend to a woman who thinks composting her own hair is a hobby. But then, the door opens. It's not a guard. It's not a lawyer. It is Sir Fluffington. The dire bear squeezes through the double doors. He is massive, 7 feet tall at the shoulder, on all fours. His fur is groomed to perfection. And yes, he is wearing a monocle. He stands up on his hind legs, towering over the room. He adjusts his silk tie with a claw the size of a sickle. He clears his throat. It sounds like a rock slide. "Excuse me," the bear says. The voice is deep, resonant, and sounds suspiciously like a renowned British thespian. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding regarding my agency in this matter." Silence. Even Ilara's vines stop moving. The Sphinx yukes over its glasses. "The witness speaks. The witness," Fluffington says, stepping into the room. "Does more than speak. The witness thinks. And frankly, the witness is tired of being discussed like a piece of furniture." He walks to the table. He looks at Kaylin. He looks at Ilara. "Mother," he says to Ilara, "your impression of a bear is reductive. It borders on caricature. We do not just roar and scratch. We contemplate the salmon. We assess the honey. You lack nuance." Ilara gasps. "Fluffy, I did it for you, to connect with your soul." "You did it," the bear says, "to win an argument. And you," he turns to Kaylin, "Father, I love you, but the tuxedo was a bit tight in the shoulders, and I prefer Earl Grey to chamomile. We need to set boundaries." Kaylin is weeping. "I'm sorry. I'll buy you a bigger suit." "It is not about the suit," Fluffington says. And this is where the music stops. This is where the trap snaps shut. "It is about the assets," the bear says. Assets. Part 3. The climax. Ursa Major versus everyone. Sir Fluffington reaches into a satchel he was carrying. A satchel Kaylin bought him, ironically. He pulls out a stack of documents. "I have spent the last 6 months reading the Imperial Legal Code," the bear announces. "Specifically, the sections regarding awakened sentience and property rights. You see, once I was awakened, I ceased to be chattel. I became a citizen, a hairy, large citizen, but a citizen nonetheless." He slides the papers across the table to the Sphinx. "Therefore, the concept of custody is moot. I cannot be owned. I am an autonomous individual, and as such, I am countersuing both of you." Kaylin stops crying. "What?" Ilara blinks. "Excuse me?" "Emotional damages," Fluffington lists, ticking them off on his claws. "For Kaylin, undue infantilization, forced dress-up, and a restrictive diet of kibble, when I clearly have the palate for venison tartare. For Ilara, harassment." Identity theft. Impersonating a bear is a crime in some cultures, you know, and general annoyance. "But Fluffy," Kaylin wails, "we're family." "We are cohabitants," the bear corrects. "And regarding the treehouse, I believe I have a claim to it under the Squatters' Rights Clause of the Feywild Treaty. I have occupied the rug in the living room for 5 continuous years. It is my territory, legally." The door opens again. "Objection!" shouts a voice. But it's not objecting to the bear. Striding into the room is a tiefling, crimson skin, horns curled like a ram, wearing a suit sharp enough to cut glass. He carries a briefcase that smells like brimstone. "My client," the tiefling says, gesturing to the bear, "is being modest. We are not just suing for the house. We are suing for the hoard, all 5,000 gold pieces, as back pay for services rendered as a companion and tank during your adventuring years. Unpaid labor, Kaylin. It's a bad look." "Who is this?" Ilara screeches. "This," Fluffington says, taking a sip of water from a tiny cup, "is my attorney, Malthus the Soulbinder. We met at the park. He threw a frisbee. I caught it. We got to talking about tort reform." The tiefling grins. His teeth are filed to points. "Gentle beings, you are looking at the founding partners of a new firm, Ursa and Hellfire, attorneys at law, and we are about to take you for everything you have." The Sphinx looks at the documents, looks at the bear. looks at the tiefling. The paperwork, the Sphinx says, is in order. The bear has a point. Kaelin looks at Ilara. Ilara looks at Kaelin. For the first time in years, they are united. United in the realization that they have been outsmarted by an animal that licks its own butt. "Oh, wait!" Ilara screams. "I can counterspell!" "Objection," the tiefling says smoothly. "Hostile action in a mediation chamber. That's a fine. And a forfeiture of rights." "Granted," says the Sphinx. Sir Fluffington looks at his former owners. His eyes, deep and brown and filled with a frightening amount of intelligence, narrow slightly. "I suggest you settle," the bear rumbles. "I have a craving for expensive honey, and you two are going to pay for it." Part 4. The conclusion. A toast to the apex predator. So how does it end? Does the ranger win back his furry friend? Does the druid learn humility? Don't be stupid. This is the legal system. Nobody wins except the lawyers. Kaelin lost the house. He lost the whore. He currently lives in a rented studio apartment above a goblin tannery. He had to reclass. He's a monk now. He shaved his head and took a vow of silence because, honestly, what is there left to say when your pet bear evicts you? He spends his days meditating and trying to find inner peace, which is code for trying not to scream. Ilara didn't fare much better. She tried to wild shape into a judge to overrule the verdict. Turns out, impersonating a judicial official is a felony. She's currently serving 5 to 10 years in a wizard's prison, inside a tiny glass jar on a shelf. And Sir Fluffington? I saw him just last week. He was on the balcony of the treehouse, his treehouse now. He was wearing a velvet smoking jacket. He was drinking a cup of chamomile tea. Apparently, he developed a taste for it after all. Sitting across from him was the tiefling. They were laughing. They have a billboard on the highway now. I saw it on my way to the market. It features a giant picture of Fluffington pointing a claw at the viewer. The caption reads, "Injured by an adventurer? Treated like an NPC in your own life? Call Sir Fluffington. He will claw back your rights." He used Kaelin's picture as the before example. It's brutal. It's savage. It's absolutely hilarious. The lesson here, my darlings, is simple. If you love something, set it free. If it comes back, it's yours. If it learns common, hires a warlock, and sues you for emotional distress, well, you probably shouldn't have cast that 5th level enchantment spell. You absolute walnut. So here is to Sir Fluffington, the smartest bear in the woods, and here is to Kaelin and Ilara. May they find love again, preferably with something that doesn't have a law degree. Cheers, now get out. The floorboards are complaining about your aura, and I have a date with a bottle of wyvern venom and a bubble bath. I said, shoo.